Hello and welcome. I'm Hazel Butterworth, Catalyst for Self-Awareness and Self-Liberation.
And I'm Carmen Braga. I'm a self-awakening mentor for women. And we are the co-owners of Healing Heart Center in Sherwood Park, Alberta.
And you can find us at www.healingheartcenter.ca. Hello and welcome back. I'm Hazel Butterworth.
And I'm Carmen Braga.
And this is the fourth
and final
in our series on fear.
Yeah, this has been, it's an interesting topic. Hopefully you've watched the first 3 videos. We've covered a lot of different ways of fear. From fear of the unknown, psychological fears, what is fear, going into many different aspects of it.
When does it show up? How does it show up? What do we do with that fear? How do we respond to that fear? So today we're going to look at some of the ways, just a few ways that maybe help you dissolve some of those fears or work with those fears.
Yeah. Well, and that's the whole idea of it, is to look at it for what it is. We all have them. Every single one of us has fears, but we don't want to be living in fear most of the time. And I think that's a big portion of what we are doing as a society and have been doing throughout history. We live in fear a lot, and on many different levels. And for me, first half of my life, I was actually terrified of bees and wasps. That was my biggest fear. And every time I went outside in the summertime, always there was a bee or a wasp coming at my head every single time. And it got to the point that I was so scared that I actually stopped going outside in the summertime as much as I possibly could. It was that bad. I actually welcomed winter because then there was no bugs around, right? That was my thing. And I had such a huge fear of these bees until I met my husband that I'm married to now. When I met him, I was so Twitter-pated. We just wanted to go everywhere, do everything that we could together, and we just had fun. And we were outside all the time doing all kinds of activities, all kinds of hikes and things like that. And I was having a blast. And one day, it actually dawned on me. I literally stopped and went, hold on a second. I haven't had any bees and wasps diving at my head. And I've actually been outside. And the answer that came to me is because I took my focus off of the fear and put it on the fun. All those years, I had been so ultra focused on my fear that I was actually drawing it to me. And I didn't realize that I was doing that. So as soon as I took my focus off of that fear and put it on just having fun, well, it's not that the bees and wasps went away. They're still there, but they were no longer, I wasn't attracting them to me anymore. And that was a huge eye-opener for me. That was really cool, because there's so many things that we're focused on that are fear-based. And it really is debilitating, just as debilitating as it was for me staying inside in the summertime, right? So take your focus off the fear, put it on the fun.
And in addition to that, right, like shifting the focus, that works in that scenario. You can also use the 180. So again, shifting the focus, but maybe in some scenarios, rather than just taking your focus off, because that's what worked and that was good in that scenario, but there's another option too, the 180. In other words, instead of focusing here on the fear and what's not, is literally do a 180. And when you look there, you can no longer see this. It's not to say it doesn't exist, but our focus, as you changed your focus, is what do you want to invite? So some of the fears that you have, you can change your focus to what you want the outcome to be. For example, a lady in class, her daughter had just learned to drive, and she had fear, fear, fear every time her daughter was out driving. She's a new driver on the road, and what was she focused on? She was worried and focused on
Or getting into an accident.
exactly.
Yeah.
And that seems to be a natural process, right? So, oh, they're a new driver. Oh, maybe they're, oh, they're late. Maybe they're, they're in an accident. Maybe they're. So we worked with that and we changed. We did the 180 and invited what do you want? Because when we go into fear, we go to the worst case scenario. And in truth, is that what you really want? No. So what do you want? What do you want to invite in? And so we shift that over to what do you want to invite? So rather than thinking, oh gosh, she's a new driver, and you're thinking about, oh, she might be in an accident, and all you can visualize is an accident, then we visualize and we think about she's passed her test, she's safe wherever she is, she will be a diligent driver, and she will be home, right? You change that she's safe and is driving well, and rather than focusing on what might or might not happen for the worst case scenario. So what would be the best case scenario? So that's one way of dealing with your fears. Both possibilities exist. We have this duality world. Both possibilities exist, but which do you want to focus on? The worst outcome or the best outcome? And that will help you dissolve a lot of your fears, or at least manage them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
In that sense.
Yeah. Because well, and as I spoke about before, managing them, because those fears can turn into anxiety attacks.
Oh, huge.
Big time. And that's the main reason why we have anxiety attacks, right?
Yes.
It's because of our fears, and they get out of control.
Yes.
The mind starts making things up that aren't real.
Well, it escalates and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, like the B story that I had in the last video on that. And like when you said with your anxiety attack too. And again, it's like we ask those logical questions. That's one way of looking at ask the logical questions. Now, the fear that you're having, is it a real fear? Is it a danger fear? Is it ego doing its job and saying, hey, you've got to pay attention here because this is dangerous? Or is it the psychological fear where you're making up the scenarios in your mind? The body doesn't know the difference. It responds to fear with anxiety.
Exactly.
That's the result of being in that fearful thought, right? So that process helps, right?
Well,
have the logical questions.
Yeah. Well, and the opposite to that, like you said, the body doesn't know the difference.
No.
So when the mind is making something up, a fearful situation, and the body goes into that constricted place, and you start, the breathing heavy and hyperventilating, and I think most of us know what that feels like when that fear takes you over. But like you said, doing the 180, you can do that. We also know that when you sit and you think of a peaceful place, someplace that you love, right? For me, it's the mountains. So I can take myself and sit and imagine that I'm in the mountains, and the smell of the trees, the birds singing, the quiet, and all of a sudden my body just starts to relax, and it starts to de-stress and come down. I don't have to physically be there.
No.
The mind is incredibly powerful, and it goes in both directions.
It does.
Right?
It changes the chemistry in your body, and it works well with children. It works anytime, because you cannot feel two emotions at the same time. So if you're in fear and start to think of something that you enjoy, whether it's through visualization, imagination, or with children, you can ask them what's their favorite color, what's their favorite toy, and start talking about good memories, happy memories, anything that helps them to shift how they are thinking in that moment. If you shift how you're thinking and what you're focused on, it changes how you're feeling as well. And it brings that change of chemistry into play. Hello, we're Hazel and Carmen with Healing Heart Center, Sherwood Park, and this is the Inspiration Station for Self-Awareness.
And you're watching TVU. To watch our show, click on the Health and Wellness channel. Yes, it absolutely does. It changes everything. So what are some ways that we can deal with our fears?
A simple one, right? And you can do immediately. Pause. As soon as you recognize and notice, right, the rats, some of you are not familiar with, but recognize, acknowledge, take action, and surrender. In that moment, just recognize and acknowledge, this is what I'm experiencing. So you can pause, take a moment. What is this? And then from there, you can move forward. But when you take that pause, if you shift your focus even onto your breath and slow the breath down, and even as I am doing, slow your thoughts down and have a slower conversation. Because generally when fear picks in, we all get up and get excited and we start talking, and then we don't even get everything up because and it just becomes chaos, right? So if you sense that chaos building, you can simply slow things down and be present. Because remember, fear of something in the future, or fear because of past results and are coming into this experience. So if we bring ourselves to the very present moment, that's a really effective one, to be present with your emotions, with your feelings, and just recognize and acknowledge, take action, surrender, right? Pause, breathe. I find that's a real helpful one, because in that moment of silence, then you've got an opportunity then, because you've got space to respond and to make a choice.
It's like being in the eye of the storm.
In the eye of the storm, absolutely.
Yeah, and that's something. I actually had a dream years ago about being underwater, and I could breathe, and I knew it was like a tornado going on above me. I knew that there was all that chaos out there, but I was very calm in that place. And I knew that all that was happening out there, but I could be in that place of peace and presence, and I wasn't affected by all of that.
Exactly, because in that moment we're not, because that moment is stillness, right? It's just there, and you see the chaos around you. All right. So recognizing, meditation's a good one. Journaling, we mentioned that before too, is a good one.
Journaling's my go-to, because that's how I connect and channel and things like that, is through writing. So for me, the journaling, and that's very different than keeping a diary.
Absolutely.
Very, very different. And some people love it, some people hate it. I mean, we know one lady who she will not write, period. She just doesn't like it. That's
she'll write one word. If I ask her to do it, she'll just write one word. Is that it? Well, that's all that came. One word. Okay, fine.
But for me, that's how I get my answers, journaling, and it helps me to calm down, right? It just does. Another way too, if you've got, like, if you're this just popped into my mind because I've done this before too, is on our phones, you can always just go for a walk. You can just put it on record, and you can actually just talk to yourself, right? And just talk to yourself in the phone.
I thought when you said go for a walk, because that you could just physically remove yourself from that scenario for a little while. Well, and you can do it mentally, or you can do it physically. So when you say go for a walk, but you can actually talk to yourself. I've done that and recorded, and it's funny to listen to yourself back. And so whether you're journaling or recording, and when you begin to start to write about your fears, sometimes in that process you realize, really? Really? But sometimes we do dialogue, and we both ask questions and get our answers. I mean, I do mine with my opposite hand, and ask questions, go into my heart and soul, and ask the questions. What is the truth of that fear? Where's it originated from? Because sometimes you can adopt a fear. Right? You can pick up someone else's fear because you're surrounded by it, or as a child, pick up your parents' fear, and you adopt that because you've grown up surrounded by people who have those certain fears. And it could be after the war, right, the lack of food and the bread lines that our parents lined up in and stuff like that. My mum had a fear of cats. And as you know, cats aren't my favorite thing. And I think that's because that's an adopted fear, because
and the cat will make a point of going to you just
exactly.
because of that.
And not only that, my husband was the same. Not only that, this cat that never bites anybody bit my husband on the shin. And then not only that, but a few months later, it did the same thing.
Oh, gosh.
Our cat never bites. Then why in that moment did this cat suddenly decide to take a little and stick the teeth in? So that didn't help my fear of cats, because I don't trust cats.
And I love cats.
I know. I have friends that absolutely adore them, and they are very super sensitive. I've even worked on cats, which is like, that was an interesting one, because I had to really, here's one thing you can do too, is put your fear aside. Because even though I had a fear of cats, I worked with a lady and her cat, and this cat was on, I was giving a Reiki session, this cat was just sitting there looking at me, and it was like, oh, okay. And then in here I'm thinking, you know, like, yeah, you're gonna bite me, and it's like, no, I had to get those thoughts out of my head, because I know they're super sensitive. And the same when I worked on a horse. I'm not a horsey person either, but I got to work on a horse, and I knew animals that are, as you know, right, is super aware, and they sense your fears. And so here I am talking to this horse and having this mantra in my head, and just letting this horse know, please be gentle with me. I'm here to help you. Please be gentle with me. And all of a sudden, this horse's head is right here. My friend got her ear bitten off by a horse when we were kids. So this horse's head's here, and again, fear arises. I'm thinking, oh, don't bite my ear off. Well, don't send that thought. So I'm having this dialogue in my head. Don't even think that. Don't think that. Don't think that. Don't think that. So I'm just saying, you know. And then I looked around, and she had the most beautiful eyelashes. And I looked at it. It's like, oh my goodness, you've got the most beautiful eyelashes. And then she just blinked them at me, and it was like, I think we're going to be okay.
Well, you're taking your focus off the fear.
Exactly, yes, right?
Yes.
But it's amazing. But you know, we all have those dialogues, and fear can show up at the most, you know, inappropriate moment, if you like, or the most spontaneous moment. We never know when it's going to show, but sometimes we can approach them, like knowing I was going to work on a horse, and it's only because I've never been around horses that much, so I don't know horse language. You know, I didn't know you're not supposed to stare them in the eye. I thought that was the safest thing. Look them in the eye as you walk towards them. Apparently not, because that's the predator. Yeah. So, but yes, it was quite good. Sorry, a quick one. But when Amy was here and we went to the horses, and she's being bold and brassy, and then the owner goes, yeah, horses know when you're afraid. And she went, okay, I'm afraid. So again, when fear shows up, sometimes admit it, and that could be how you handle your fear. Exactly. Just admit it, right?
Well, and that's acknowledge your fears, right?
Yes.
Don't suppress them, don't push them down. And we do that all the time. We stuff them down, and we suppress our fears. And we talked about that in one of our other ones too. Do not suppress them. It's just acknowledge them. Look at them for what they really are. Like I said, we all have fears, every one of us. But oftentimes, if we really go into the fear and actually look at it for what it is, we can go beyond that fear. And it's not to get rid of it. It's there for a reason. It teaches us a lot. But to kind of make friends with the fear in a sense of, you want to just be in harmony with it and just allow it to be what it is. You know?
And it shows up where you can harness that fear, and where that adrenaline becomes excitement. You see that in people who do extreme sports or really dangerous, right? And they do it because of the fear. They love it because it's dangerous, you know. Yeah, I might die, but it's exciting because they're really pushing. Rush. Yeah, they're really pushing their limits. But then they get addicted to the adrenaline rush, right? And so it has to be more daring, more exciting. And you know, we see skiers go off on slopes that really probably they shouldn't go down and get caught in that much, right? Because they're pushing the limits, but they're feeding off that adrenaline that comes up with fear. So again, awareness, right? Because fear, you can it can create that excitement and exhilaration as well. And so then sometimes you wonder where ego role is to alert you to danger. Then you're ignoring ego, saying, well, this is really dangerous, and you're going, hey, I want to go, the more dangerous the better, right? And that's what drives some people in the extreme sports, right? So yeah, there's so many faces to fear.
And in some ways, though, when you look at it that way too, if a person has gone beyond their fear of death, for example, then they kind of made peace with that. They've made peace with that part of themselves. And Will Smith was actually talking about that, that he feels that now that he conquered his fear of sharks in the water and stuff, that, you know, it doesn't scare him anymore. He felt that he had gone beyond that point and made peace with that, that if something happened, if he died, well, then he died.
But remember when we have talked about fear itself and fearing fear itself, and fear feeds on fear. So that fear of death, right? When you're actually facing fear with fear, you're actually keeping that fear there. So once you've embraced it and accepted and embraced and dissolved the fear of death, you're free to live life.
Yes.
Because we're not afraid anymore of dying. So each day we embrace life more, because we all know one day we're going to die. But to not be afraid of it is like, well, let's just live today, because who knows? You know, we don't know when that last breath will be.
Exactly.
Right? But we don't have to be afraid of it. We know it's coming. Right?
Oh, and that's the thing. I mean, why do we fear these days? Why do we fear each day? In some ways we do. We have these fears in place, and and it does stop us from living life fully. Yeah, it really does. Yeah. So to step into that and just say, you know what, whatever this day is going to bring, it's going to bring. And I'm open to just enjoying it and appreciating it and loving it and being in gratitude of what I have and what's showing up in this moment for me, and go through your day like that. It's a lot nicer than living in that
more
fear all the
pleasurable.
time. Yeah.
That's creating your bliss and creating your heaven on earth, right? Yeah. Is that wonderful place that you love to be and enjoy, right? So so there's some helpful ways, some ways that we've shared with you on how to deal with fear, how to dissolve fear, how to acknowledge fear, how to move through fear, how to harness fear. You know, lots of ways we can work with fear. It's not always a bad thing. Yeah. It can be our motivator to be more diligent. It can be our motivator to explore more.
And it teaches you a lot about yourself.
Yes,
it really does. You know, and another good one too, talk to someone.
Oh yes.
That's one of the biggest ones. Again, we're here. This is what we do for a living, right? Is we help people to move through these things and to navigate your way through these fearful things that are stopping you from living your life fully, right? So if you want to reach out to us, go on our website, healingheartcenter.ca, and you can book free introductory calls with either Hazel or myself. We have a wonderful Facebook page called Ignite Peace Within that has taken on a life of its own. We have some amazing people in there. There's lots of helpful hints and tips in there as well on how to work with yourself and deal with these things too. There's every day we've got different things going on in there. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Alrighty. So thank you for being with us, and until next time, be fearless.
And be kind to yourself.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Hello, this is Hazel and Carmen from Healing Heart Center. This is the Inspiration Station for Self-Awareness.
And you're watching the Health and Wellness channel on TVU.